Welcome to Season 3, Episode 10, and the season finale of the Press Play and Run podcast with me, your host Ryan Miller, and my co-host Alison Jardin. How are you doing, Alison?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. Surviving paranoia so far.
It's got to be first up in the agenda before we do anything else. We are going to have a really short intro this week because we've got a cracking guest interview. The episode might run a bit longer if we take too long here. So a few things to address, but let's start there, Alison. Paranoia. Last time we spoke, I think you were on the cusp of it. How are you feeling about London? What's on your mind in terms of paranoia, if it exists?
I've decided it doesn't anymore. I read a good post the other day about focusing on the positives now because we've put the hard work in for the last 14, 16 weeks. So I'm trying to change my approach slightly and just focus on this as being positive. That's not to say I'm not feeling aches and pains and tiredness, but I think that's fairly normal. So I am going with a different approach this time and positive thoughts only.
I like that. That's a new you.
That's it. See?
Long may it continue.
Let's see.
Even in my first marathon block last year, I didn't get that paranoia.
I know, I'm so jealous.
In the sense of that, see those like phantom niggles and none of that really, that doesn't come into my head. I think all I get right now is crushing self-doubt about your ability to hit the times that you want to hit. And running into this taper period, I did a progression run last night and just doing the marathon pace for literally 1 kilometre, I was like, oh my God, this is so hard. Off the back of a fair effort in my long run yesterday, but the thought of trying to hold that for the whole time, completely natural. I've read a million things, but it still does play in your head to say, how can I do that?
It's one of the things I always say to somebody, especially if you've not done a marathon before, this is the week where you start doubting everything because your legs are tired, and that's why they tell you to rest. But when you go and do these short, because it's going to be short, sharp, fast little speed sessions, if anything, and it just feels impossible. So I'd say just stay calm, trust the process. Like, we haven't done these last 14, 15, 16 weeks for nothing. So you've just got to trust it and don't go and do anything stupid now.
There's some really good advice out there online, and I think you really need to pay attention at this point to experts and people that really know. They've been over the course, they've done the drill. There's a lot of noise out there online, but pick your sources of information closely. You've worked so hard, and just don't go and batter yourself over the next few days. There's nothing to be gained now, only potential for injuring yourself or being tired in the line. You've done the work. You need to just accept where you are, whether that's the best block you've ever had, mediocre, poor block. You are where you are. You're not going to add much in this next week or so. So I'm feeling good about it, Alison. I just really want to get going now. My biggest concern right now, apart from my ability to hold my pace, is the weather. It's just, I feel like I'm in constant weather watch.
I actually just messaged someone that lives down outside London today, and I was like, I know we've got a forecast, but can you be my actual person on the ground and tell me what it's really like?
Somebody looking out the window for you.
But yeah, well, let's be honest, I don't think any of the UK's had the best weather this year at all so far. So it is starting to bother me, and I think for both of us, it's opposites, isn't it? Like, I want sunshine and dry weather, whereas you want it cooler with a bit of drizzle.
I would take exactly what's happening right here, minus the 50-mile-an-hour winds that we had for our long run on Sunday with the Press Play and Run Club. We were running practically on the spot for points of that and 50-mile-an-hour winds. It was mad.
Looked brutal.
It was mad, but still, what a turnout again. We had like 39 people there, which, considering our Manchester crowd are right into the guts of Taper, and you already had people about Paris, and it's just sensational stuff. So this week's Run Club, we are going to put on an out and back again because we've got a significant group of about 30 doing the Edinburgh Marathon Festival. So we'll have an out and back to allow them. They're heading into peak weeks. We'll give you a route that can get you out to as close to 20 miles as possible if that's what you've got in your plan. But for anybody who's thinking about the London Taper, the out and back will allow, most of us will be running, I think, fewer than 10 miles anyway, and at a quite reasonable speed. So there'll be that facility there as well. We'll make sure we get that on. Following that, Alison, I think we've had a chat about it, and our thoughts on the Press Play and Run Club for the long runs is that we will use the Facebook space to arrange a more sort of ad hoc arrangement for the Edinburgh Marathon people.
Yeah, I think so. Like we said, I mean, people are going to be tired after the marathons that have already happened or other races. There's also like loads of commitments on just now and people going into those final weeks of Edinburgh training. So I think we've seen people use the space when we haven't been there, and that's kind of what we've always wanted. So yeah, use that space. We'll try and do the ad hoc runs as and when possible, but that's not to say you can't do one every weekend, but just use the people that you've grown to know around you, really.
Yeah, and like that route that we did on Sunday, you might see that cropping up over the next few weeks on a regular basis because it's really simplistic. You can't get lost on it. Anybody that wants to come, it can treat it as an out and back. So if I can put something like that out, people can see the route. Then you can just organise amongst yourselves in terms of pace groups what you've got and get you to the line. And we will see you at the Edinburgh Marathon Festival. We're both running the half,
Yep,
and we're staying on. Well, I'm certainly staying on. Are you
I'm
staying on?
staying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're staying on to cheer the marathon. Hoping to make a night of it as well. So really, really looking forward to that. Just need to suss out arrangements because it starts at like 3 in the morning or something crazy, doesn't it? Like Edinburgh are up before the sun for that race. So really looking forward to that. Loads and loads of exciting stuff to come. And before we move on to talk about the podcast, Alison, we want to give a shout out.
Yes, so I think some of you may have seen it's been shared on the Facebook page and all over Instagram as well that Kirsten, who is one of the key members of our Press Play and Run group, has started a Strides and Smiles Run Club, which begins this Monday at 6:30 in the East End of Glasgow. So if you are around that area or just fancy making it along, then please head along. It's our first one, and I think it's going to be amazing because I know how much work she's put into it.
Yeah, so Kirsten, good friend of ours, also a Jog Scotland leader through Scottish Athletics, is going to put these sessions on for all ability levels, and they're going to be like a planned session as opposed to just a social run. So you might find there's some interval work there, speed work. If you're looking for an introduction into a bit more structure in your runs, this is going to be the perfect place to be because of the mixture of abilities from very beginners right through to people that are a bit more experienced. You'll be able to get out at what you need because of what she's got planned. So the meeting point is in Cunningar Loop. Just search for Strides and Smiles or look in our Facebook group. You'll find the link. I'm going to try and get along on Monday to support that first run because Kirsten's done so much for the group. She's been one of those core members that's been at our back the whole time. Really buzzing for her to see how that goes, and I know there's a lot going on marathon wise. It'd be great to see as many people that are in and around the East End getting there as possible. So good luck, Kirsten, with what you've got coming up. Which brings us, I think, to the podcast itself. So we are in our season finale for this episode. That season 3 is here. That's been and gone already. We are going to have a couple of social runs, one-off type things with the Press Play and Run Club over the summer period. So like the mural run things that we said we'd do after the Edinburgh Marathon Festival. We've got some exciting stuff sort of in the back burner at the moment. That will be announced just as and when the plans all fall into place. But the podcast itself is going to take a break after this. We are going to come back for a London special because I think people want to know how you got on, how I got on, how some of our guests got on. So that is the plan. Off the back of this, we will do a one-off London Marathon recap special, but then we're going to take a break over the summer, yeah?
Yeah, I think so, eh?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on over the summer. There'll be a lot of racing. There will still be community type events, but the podcast itself will break until potentially the end of summer and come back to coincide with the beginning of the autumn marathon block beginning. So I've obviously got Chicago coming up. I think that's a natural point at which to pin season 4 around, and hopefully, unless you get a better offer, you'll be back with us. Although I know you're in demand from local media these days. Tell us what you're doing today, Alison, or sorry, Wednesday.
Wednesday. I've been asked to do a little interview for one of our local radio stations just to talk about the track series that I took part in and also just about my running in general. So I'll keep myself busy talking about running while we're having a break.
Hashtag big fucking deal.
You know it.
What I'm really looking forward to is hearing your voice talking about running more frequently because it doesn't happen enough at the moment.
Listen, we've got a car journey of 8 hours for me to talk about running.
The music will be up very loud. We're singing Celine Dion the whole way down. Right, so that covers the podcast off. I think that covers Kirsten off, Maranoia off. Anything else that you want to chuck in there?
No, I just wish everyone luck. I know that when this comes out, Manchester will only be a couple of days away. Then we've got London and some other big running events as well. So just the hard work's definitely been worth it. Remember that on the day. And the most important thing is have a good time.
And a massive shout out to Susanna and Katrine from the Press Play and Run Club for their efforts in the Paris Marathon last week. Both of them looked like they had a cracking run, looked like a brilliant day. We didn't have many at that. We'd one more injured, I think. So we won't be doing shout outs for all 30 odd going to Manchester and the same for London. But well done to them as well. It's been so many nice messages over the last week about what the Press Play and Run Club's done for people in terms of the relationships and the connections. It's been lovely to see.
I think it has. And to me, like I actually said this to Katrine the other day, that this has been my favourite training block ever, I think, because of the people that I've met. And it's just made it completely different. And I've really enjoyed it. So thanks to everybody that's been a part of it.
Perfect. And today's episode, we are joined by Yvonne McNairn, who's another member of the Press Play and Run Club. She's come to it in the later part of the training block. But Yvonne is one of these people, Alison, that you and I didn't really know particularly well. She's very much a front of the pack runner. She has been competitive in the sharp end podium places and club races across Scotland. But her story in getting there, I think, took us both really by surprise. It's not what it's a key reminder that everybody started somewhere, and her journey has been incredible.
To be honest, I know we didn't do it on purpose, but I think this has come at the perfect time. So I hope everyone enjoys it and takes away, I think, what we have, and it's really inspirational. And she's a lovely person, so enjoy.
And we'll maybe even get her on for the recap because she's running London as well.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you to everybody that supported us through this season again. All the shares, all the likes, all the reviews, everything goes such a long way to helping us get out there. We're both really appreciative of everything that you've done for us. And Alison, let's go smash London.
Let's do this.
Let's do it. This season, and in every season of Press Play and Run, we speak to a range of guests from across the running spectrum. Today's season finale guest is from the Speedy Mob. Such has been the improvement and consistency in her running, and indeed the accolades she's stacking up, you'd be forgiven for thinking that she's always been at the front of the pack, mixing it with the best club runners in Scotland. However, as we've learned, every runner has a beginning and hurdles to clear along the way, and this one's no different. It's our pleasure to welcome to Press Play and Run, a runner, a mum, and one of the good eggs of the Scottish running scene, Yvonne McNairn. How are you, Yvonne?
I am good, thanks. That was some intro. Thank you.
There we go. I worked on that for at least 3.5 minutes before we got on this call.
I was sitting thinking, I think he's got the wrong person here.
What we try and do is we gas up the person at the beginning, and then we let them let themselves down as the episode goes on.
I'll let myself down, yeah, absolutely.
Aye, so
that's go downhill from here.
Yeah, so we started off with Alison, and it's only ever went downhill since Alison started off at such a high peak.
So,
Yvonne, as I've alluded to there, some people will know you. You will be a face that will be familiar to people from podiums at races at the moment, and you've had a very good start to this season. But I think I had made the assumption, as had Alison, that you'd kind of always been there until I started speaking to you. You came to the Press Play and Run Club. Mm-hmm. We got a chance to have a run. When I say together, I was about 10 yards behind. It was together-ish, and you were chatting and I was breathing heavily.
You're just trying to make us all feel better.
Aye, well, I certainly did that day. But it was only at that point that you realise sometimes what you forget is that everybody's got a story, even those people, and we will be those people to others as well, Alison. I suppose people see you as the 6-star finisher, and everybody sees you as that. They forget how terrible your first marathon experience was and where you came from. So Yvonne, can you kick us off with a wee bit of background just about your very early running, because I know you did run as a kid.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it short because I suppose it is such a long story.
Yeah, give us the highlights.
And I was thinking about it during the week. That's what I was saying. It kept popping into my head. I was thinking about the very first time that I'd ever heard of a running club, and my brother, who's a bit older than me, Derek, he was heading off somewhere, and I was sitting in the garden just reading as I used to do. And I said, where are you going? And he said, I'm going to this running club. And I was like, my ears pricked up. And I said, do you have to be fast to go to a running club? And he said, no, you can just go along. And from that moment, I thought, I really want to go to this running club. So off he goes, and I left him to it. And then the next week I went along with him. But my mum didn't drive, so we had to get the bus, and then you had to walk over to where Giffnock North is. And to be honest, that's my very, very first early memory. I don't remember the first training session. I certainly don't remember much about the early days. All I do remember is that we used to get to go to the cross-country races. Giffnock North were great, and they still are. As you know, Giffnock North have got a huge junior, one of the biggest, I think the biggest junior section in Scotland, and a really successful junior section. So I suppose back in the day when I was 13, 14, I was part of that successful junior section, but I didn't realise it at the time.
Yeah, no clue.
It wasn't until recently that my coach from then, Dudley Walker, said to me, it was about the West District. As an adult, as a 30-odd-year-old, I'd been selected for the West District cross country, and I'd put something on Facebook like, first time I've ever been selected for the West Districts, I'm so excited. And he said, Yvonne, you were selected as an under 13. I was like, oh, what was that? I had no clue. I had absolutely no clue. So I went back and I looked up the results from back in the day when it was the West Districts. And I looked up, and right enough, he was right. I'd been selected for the West Districts, and I had no memory, no clue. And I was stone last.
But clearly at that age and stage, you're running without a care in the world for times or anything else. You just want to be part of something.
I don't even remember it. I
Yeah.
honestly don't even remember it. I've obviously been selected. I've got to go to this big race, and yeah, no memory. So it's quite crazy what the memory does. But that was the very early days of the running.
And a great story to establish the fact that you were shit.
I was really, really bad. And you know, part of that was the fact that, I suppose not part of it, I wasn't mad motivated, but I remember looking around at the girls that I used to train with and think, they are so good, they're so fast, they must train all the time. And I actually think they did. I think they trained regularly, as you need to be good. I think they definitely ate right. I didn't do that. I didn't go to training regularly when I was younger because I couldn't. I really did rely on parents of other athletes to take me.
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't eating like an athlete, which I think a lot of these young, good juniors were doing and probably are still doing. I was just kind of playing around.
Yeah.
And I was always, one of my biggest memories of running when I was younger is I was always fourth. I would go to the East Renfrewshire schools and I would be fourth. And I used to just think, so close.
One step away from the podium.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did okay, like East Renfrewshire level, but I remember in the Scottish schools, I was always rubbish. The nationals, rubbish.
And I do know from your story that you then fell away from running, as has been the case with multiple of these episodes. We find out people who started young very rarely sustain right through adulthood, and particularly for females when there's all sorts of changes in your body, pressures, and we've spoken to some athletes about that, or some people that have ended up being even top athletes. So what was your ages of sort of disappearing out of that scene, and when did you find your way back?
I would say I definitely ran as an under 13 and an under 15, and then I vaguely remember in about 5th year or 6th year at high school, just looking around me and nobody else did a sport, nobody else trained, nobody else dedicated their life to any sort of anything. And I thought, why am I doing it? They're all going to parties, they're all doing this, they're doing that. And I thought, sod it. And I just chucked it. Just one day, I remember, I never went back. And I remember my coach when I was about 17, Dudley, the guy I was talking about before, he came into Safeway, which it was at the time. It's now the Sainsbury's at Muir End. He came in and he's like, Yvonne, you going to come back to training? I was like, yeah, Dudley, sure, I'll be back. Never went back.
No.
Started uni at sort of 17. And that was one of my biggest regret is that I didn't run when I was at uni, because I see what they're all doing now at uni and think, I've missed a gig there. I really did. But I wasn't interested. I went to Jordan Hill. It was miles away from everything. I had to get the bus there. It sucked the life out of me, the travel. And I just didn't. I just got fatter and fatter and fatter. And
was that teacher training?
Up and up and up.
Was that teacher training at that point?
Teacher training at Jordan Hill, yeah.
You're getting into a career there that even though you're at uni, you're doing placements, and there's a demand on time in that as well. That's a hard gig to juggle, as I'm sure you've found out since.
Well, exactly. It was constant. If I wasn't at uni 9 to 5, would have your placements, which would be 6, 8, 10 weeks. And it was tough going. I didn't go near running. I didn't run, not once.
So Alison, I know that you're going to be so keen to pick Yvonne's brain about some of her journey, but you were committed to drinking and partying for much longer than that.
Yeah. No, I'm just sitting nodding my head, because it's true, isn't it? I think we all get to that age. Like, I used to swim when I started high school, and the same as you, I started to get to that maybe 2nd, 3rd year where people were starting to like go out at weekends, and it was that whole negotiation of, right, okay, if you go on a Saturday, you don't have to go on a Friday. And then it was, okay, if you don't go this weekend, you go next weekend. And then it just falls away, doesn't it? And then now I look back and I think, you say, if you'd carried these things on, where would you be? I mean, but we're a way to hear who you are. You've come back to that. But there's 2 kids that I've met a few times at Parkrun that run for Giffin, Ethan and his sister Freya.
Oh yes, Scobie. Yeah.
And I just look at them, and like I think I met them like 2 years ago now, and I'm just like, I wish that I was that when I was their age, like the passion and like the commitment that they put in. But I don't think running or other sports were such a big deal. Football was, but not that running definitely wasn't. And I just look at them now and I'm like, you've got so much. Like, I hope
so
they
lucky,
don't. I hope they continue it and don't end up drinking and doing all the things that we did.
I think there's less of a culture of drinking in young people now. I don't know if it's just me who thinks this.
No, it's the same.
I do notice that a lot of young people are really throwing themselves into sport rather than throwing themselves into drinking, which is great. But
when I see all the sort of 5K social groups that pop up and are popped up all around the place, the age of the people participating in it, I didn't know any girls that participated in sport at that age, at that regularity, and now I see regularly, even at our Press Play and Run Club, we get 20-year-olds. You know, we've had 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 22 regularly out running, training for marathons. I didn't know a soul that was doing that. Running was the thing you did in this summer period at school, and it was absolutely brutal. It was cross country, which wasn't cross country. It was running around the school grounds like it was like the wacky races, or it was out on a red blaze pitch. Nobody teaching you anything about running. It was just somebody standing with a whistle going go, and you would bomb it in an 800 metres and die halfway around that track. Like, I
don't even remember doing that at school. I remember there being a blaze pitch. I remember playing hockey on it. I certainly don't remember.
Yeah. We got it in summer when now what I know is, having been a teacher since, we got athletics when the PE hall was being used for exams. That's when you got athletics, because you couldn't do indoor PE.
Of course.
So it becomes an exam hall, and I always used to wonder, why do we keep getting the long jump? Who the hell does the long jump in Bells Hill? But it's because the exam hall was being used. No so culture funny. Of it.
That makes sense now, because I'm not a high school teacher, so you will have seen that.
So they need to find ways to entertain you for weeks at a time in May.
I always remember this was primary, so a little bit before high school, and this shows
not
how much
school.
Yeah, how much I hated running, or just any sport back then apart from football. I remember we all got put to cross country, and in my head I was still obviously a bit competitive, because I was like, don't be last. But basically it was just me and this girl at the back plodding along, and anytime she'd pass me I would just make an effort to pass her, and that was the level of running that I used to do.
I remember thinking I was really good going to these cross-country races because I ran for Giffnock North, and I still wouldn't win. I'd be like, oh, come on. There'd be girls that didn't even run ahead of me. I'd be like, what am I doing here?
That's when you see the sheer natural talent of somebody who doesn't even know they're a runner, just getting packed out 100%. By their school. They're rapid. So when do you find your way back in, Yvonne? And what was the catalyst for that?
Again, it's all these kind of vivid memories that stick in your head. I remember, and I'll not mention any numbers here so that I don't offend anyone, but I remember going into Topshop, which doesn't even exist anymore, and putting on a pair of jeans and wanting this specific pair of jeans, and they wouldn't fit, and they were my normal size that I'd been for forever. And I remember getting the next size up and putting them on and thinking, I can't be this size. I'm not. You've met me now. I'm quite a small person. I'm from a small family. I'm the tallest person in my family, actually. And I remember putting them on thinking, I'm not buying these. I cannot be this size. And by this point, I'd graduated. And Ryan, I'll see if I can take a picture of my graduation photo and send it to you, because you will not even, you genuinely will not recognise me. I look like I've been pumped up. My hair was dark. And I think I was just at my lowest ebb of life at that point. I'd been in quite a bad relationship. I'd moved out of my house from my mum and my family, and that relationship had gone on right through uni, which was bad for so many reasons, but number one reason was that I wasn't happy and all I did was eat, and I certainly didn't run, and there was so many things missing. And I remember coming out of that relationship and it was this kind of light bulb moment, and I thought, I can't look like this anymore. I need to start taking care of me.
Yeah.
And that was when I met my now husband, Paul, just when I just about graduated. And I remember just saying to him one day, I'm going to go for a run. And it kind of started. And then I went back to Giffnock North. It wasn't Dudley anymore. It was the senior coach. It was Bernie Campbell, who's still my coach today. And that was kind of it. That was really the moment. It was the jeans and Topshop.
Right, well, I want to dig in here. When you go back to it, is it muscle memory kicking in? That first run, those first couple of runs, or did you feel like, oh my, the start again, the very start again?
I remember, I still remember to this day going, and there was groups. There was the A group and the B group and the C group. And I remember kind of dawdling about in the C group thinking, looking at the people in the A and the B group and thinking, how are they so fast? You used to set off in a rep and they would just be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be plodding along at the back, looking at them, just thinking, how are they so fast? That was my big memory. I don't really remember the sessions, and I don't remember much other than I was in the C group and I looked at the other ones in the A and the B group thinking, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
But how do I get there?
Yeah, especially from an almost standing start again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had a long way to go. I had a lot of blubber to lose.
Sounds like a lot of repairing as well mentally for yourself to just build back up to that point.
Yeah,
But I
big
think
time.
it's important to kind of focus on that as well, because it's so many, like I was a bit like that when I decided to, even when I decided to do that first horrific marathon, but also when I decided to try again 3 years later. And I think it's an important message for people that you can do it, but you do have to overcome that initial like losing the bit of weight that you've put on,
Yeah,
finding the memory mass again,
yeah,
and accepting that you might have to be in the C group or whatever
yeah,
group it is, and you can get back, as you're going to tell us, but
yeah.
everyone has to start somewhere.
Yeah, I remember my coach saying to me, he said, Yvonne, you'll get there. He's like, you just need to be patient. You're not going to get there right now. And I think that's one of the things that people are put off by running clubs. They first of all think that you need to be fast. I've heard it so often.
Yeah.
And like I said that when I was 13, I said to my brother, do you have to be fast? And people still say to me now, oh, I couldn't come to a running club because I'm not fast. And I'm saying you
Yeah.
don't have to be. You can come as a jogger. There's so many different abilities. And I remember thinking that support from my coach at the time when I put on my leggings and I went to track and they ripped because they didn't fit. And I was in tears at the track, and he was saying, he's given it, and they ripped right up the inseam in my inner thigh, like the biggest part of my body. I've got the biggest thighs ever. I had on these leggings. I'll never forget them. They were black Adidas with pink stripes, and they just ripped right up the inseam. And I was absolutely mortified. And I thought, this, and my coach still talks about it. He still says, do you remember that time? You know, he's saying it in a good way, as in, look how far you've come. I'm like, yes, Ernie, I remember.
Do you remember that time your legs poured out your leggings? Thanks, yeah, I do.
And I just remember thinking, how that this can't get any worse. But if there's any motivation to lose weight and try to be a better you, then that is it.
Not that many people, Yvonne, run to try and get into the A group. Most people don't know when they start running that such a thing exists. Even if you go to a club.
Yeah.
Like when I went to the club, I had no clue how it would be organised. I just knew that I was already fast enough that I could hold my own with, where you finish in a park run. So I came to the club thing very late in my own running. But it doesn't matter what the objective is. I think the point that you've made that I'm taking from it is when you go to that club for the first time, or you put your leggings on and burst out them for the first time, you're capable of getting where you can be. And that might be the A group for some people if you've got that ability and you had some background there your coach knew where you could go because he knew of you already. So that's different from a stranger rocking up to the club. But if it is to be 2 stone lighter, or if it's just to feel better about yourself, if it's to clear your head, you're not going to be where you can get to for quite a wee while. It's one run at a time and you stack it up, and then soon you can go a run and keep your trousers on.
Yeah, I know. And now they fit and they stay on and they don't rip. And it's just having that person. And for me, it was always Bernie who was there. And it was the same constant person each week who knew if you were injured, or who knew if you were having a bad week, or who knew if you were tired. And just that's the thing about running clubs that makes the difference, is that there's somebody there to be accountable to, but who also knows you as a person. And that's the difference between, I think, being a club runner and running yourself.
Yeah, spot on. And it's
We
not
talk
even
about that lot.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to be a club. It's actually just having your group.
A group,
like
yeah,
we are
100%. Yeah,
we are a long run club, but we're not a club in the traditional sense of memberships and you just rock up when you want to run. Relationships form, but you get to know people enough. Alison and I ran together today, and you run together enough to be able to say, hold your pace back, you're killing yourself. And somebody that knows you're overexerting right now this many weeks before a marathon, or it's checking in. You can't,
like that week, the first week I turned up to the Press Play and Run Club, I didn't know anyone, but I knew you.
Yeah.
So I'm like looking for you, like you're just wanting someone to kind of give you the nod, like it's okay, you're here for the first time. And that's me as someone who's been running for a long time now, and I was turning up a bit nervous to a new running club.
And I got feedback this week, which is important to reflect on the times when it doesn't always go right. I got feedback from a couple of people who came this week that didn't have the best experience for a couple of different reasons. We actually did the route that you did that time, the 3 stadium tour.
It's quite a complicated route.
It is, and also there was so much racing on at the weekend that for the first time ever we had more first timers than we did people that have been before. So that wee bit that usually sets the culture, the tone, the welcoming bit, more than half of the people there turned up with those same nerves, if you know what I mean. And then so a couple of the people there quite rightly said to me after it, that just didn't feel like they hoped it would. I think they felt a bit like isolated at the start, and what I'm having to explain is the context of is because everybody standing around you was feeling the exact same, and it's not always like that. It's everybody was keeping to themselves because they were we 25, 26
Nervous.
people there for the first time. Yeah, but if you're turning up feeling like that with your experience, how intimidating is it if you've never been in a club setting before at all?
Yeah, and then of course Mark was there, who I knew but didn't know that I knew, and so then you start to kind of relax. But yeah, you can understand how somebody who's new.
Yeah. But by the time you leave that day, you've made a couple of connections in Mark, Jack, a couple of people from the club who you've since.
How did I forget Jack?
Yeah, who you've since run with, organised to, like people. That's what happens. You find people at that right level for you to kick you on, push you on. It's an amazing thing. But I'm veering way off topic here. So you come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got somebody who's watching for you, telling you where to be. You go from you're in that C group.
Just being your cheerleader, yeah.
Can you tell me the time frame of that? When are you back at that point?
Yeah, of course.
What year?
It's a long time frame actually. Nothing came quickly. So I was 21 when I went back to Gifford North. Yeah, I was still very much partying and not really settling down in any sort of way. I wasn't settling down to a permanent job. I certainly wasn't settling down to permanent regular training. I was kind of dipping in and out of training. I would certainly try to always go to track on a Tuesday. I would always try to go to club session on a Thursday. And sometimes, if I could be bothered getting up early on a Saturday or a Sunday, I would go a long run with people. But quite often, I was probably only training 2 times a week. I was sitting at around 41, 42 for 10K, maybe 43, sitting around about 131, 132 for a half, and then always about 21, 22 for a 5K. So still good times, but I remember I always had these magic numbers, my magic 3, which were sub 40. I just banged on about that to anybody who listened. I wanted to get under 40. I wanted to get under 20 for the 5K, and I wanted to get under 130, but I had no clue how to get there. I just kept thinking I would turn up to a race and one day it would magically happen. But little did I know then that training 2 times a week and sometimes going for a long run is not going to get you there. Those 3 numbers for me were more my focus. I used to always talk about them, and I don't know if they're numbers for other people, but those were the 3 that I was
just going to say, before you even said it, I knew what they were, because I think they are the ones for most of us, aren't they?
I just was like, I just was so desperate to get under the 40 minutes, especially. I was always sitting at around 40.07, and I just couldn't get under it, no matter how hard I tried. But turns out I wasn't trying that hard, and I thought it was.
And do you think, because you obviously said that your coach knew you from way back as well, he could have at any point said, right, Yvonne, you need to do more, but do you think he was almost letting you realise that for yourself, so it's like not to force you back? You had to realise it all in your own time.
Yeah, I think he was very much just like, if I turned up to training, right, Yvonne, how are you? It was never like, you need to do this, you need to do that. Which was good for me. I think if somebody had tried to tell me how often to train back then, I would have given them, the where to go, because I wasn't interested in anybody telling me what to do back then in my early 20s, even though I was still trying to chase these numbers. If you tried to tell me how to get those numbers, I wouldn't have listened. So it was a kind of rock and a hard place.
The interesting thing on those numbers for me is that they change, they shift. Because we speak to people, we've had so many guests on, and those numbers for them might be sub 25 for 5K, and it's sub 50, or it's sub 2 hours for the half. And so those numbers, although they became, I'm the same as you, those numbers haunted me for the longest bloody time, and I could not go over the hump. I ran 40.07, 40.09 and 40.11 like 6 weeks now, 6 weeks apart, those 3, and I just could not get under the 40 minutes. It was all mental as well at that point, because I was training. But those numbers do shift. You'll have different numbers now, I'm sure, Yvonne. Like you'll have numbers in your head now. I've done all those numbers now. It doesn't stop, it just moves to a new set of numbers. So to anybody who's listening to that and thinking, that's not, because we're saying that's everybody's number, it will be. If you get near those numbers, that becomes the holy grail. But those numbers are your 2 hours, whatever your number is now, and see when you leave them. I barely spent 5 minutes thinking about them, and I wanted to hit the next ones. I don't know.
What's the next one?
It's just, I don't know if that's a how you're wired thing, but the minute you go sub 39, I ran the first time I went sub 40 was 39 low, 39 low. And the first thing I thought is, my God, that wasn't that far away from sub 39.
Aye, so straight away the bar's lowered, I know.
Like, I only need X number of seconds to get to the next minute, and it's an illness, it's a mental illness. I think we've all got a wee bit of it.
I think if you're not obsessed with running, there's something wrong with you.
Well, certainly if you want to be competitive with
Well,
yourself,
I know,
you
I
need
know.
the obsession. So when did you actually break the hump of these numbers?
I spent my 20s partying, socialising, not really training very hard. I'd still do a lot of races, but like I say, my magic numbers, I never got below them. And then I got married when I was 30, thought about having a baby, but we thought we're not going to have one yet. Let's have a few years just being married, no children.
Let's get sub 40 first.
Yeah. Let's try and get that. Oh no, I think I was still, dipping in and out of training at that point. I wasn't doing anything majorly serious. At 32, I thought, right, we should probably have a baby now. And then that didn't happen very easily. So I think we were about 2 years trying. And then nothing was happening. We're like, right, okay, what's going on here? So eventually fell pregnant with Alexander. I just had this kind of thought in my head, even though I'd still been dipping in and out of training, I had this thought in my head that I wanted to be fit during my pregnancy. I had this fear, and I don't know why, and I think it's just because I'd been surrounded with social media. I had this fear of putting on weight, pregnant, and then not being able to lose the baby weight, even though I'd never had a baby before. I'd never experienced anything like this before. I thought, I don't want to put on so much weight that all I ever then talk about is this baby weight that I want to lose. So one of the first things I did when I found out I was pregnant was start going along to the jogging network, and on a Saturday morning, on a Wednesday night, because I thought, well, I don't want to go to the running club because I'm pregnant. I didn't want to put myself under any pressure or to feel like that's where I should be. And also I didn't want to put my body under any unnecessary stress. And I thought, if I go to the jogging network, then people will be probably just going at a bit more of a sensible pace. When I was at the jogging network one Saturday morning, I just really, really didn't feel well. About 18-week pregnant at this point. I went out that Saturday with my friends for someone's birthday, and it was an all-day session. I wasn't drinking. And
thank God for that.
Well, I know. That's why I was saying session, because I was just kind of there for the chat at that moment in time. And I feel like I don't want to give too many graphic details here, but give us all the graphic. I didn't realise at the time that I had a urine infection, but I was saying to my friends who are doctors, I was like, every time I go to the toilet, it burns. It's agony. And they were saying, you've got a urine infection, you need to do this, you need to do that. And they were telling me to buy cranberry juice and drink soda water at this day out. So on the Sunday, I woke up and again, I felt hungover. I thought, oh, this is awful. And my mum came round and I was hanging up washing, and she said, Yvonne, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm really not. I feel awful. I feel hungover, Mum. And she said, well, just go back to your bed. This was about midday, and by about 2:00 in the afternoon, I woke up and I was in excruciating pain in my lower back. And it was just this really uncomfortable feeling. And I was rolling about thinking, right, it must be a muscular thing. If I move, it'll be better. But the pain just got worse and worse and worse, to the point that I was screaming in agony. And my husband came running up the stairs and he said, right, I'm phoning this. So he had this number. It was the maternity assessment number. And so they say, come in, it might be your kidneys. And they say, right, your whatever levels, I can't remember now all the technical terms. They said, you're going to have to stay in. And all I'm thinking is, I've got a urine infection and they're just going to give me antibiotics and I'll be fine. My friend said, oh, we'll come and visit. And while they were there, I remember feeling like I was starting to kind of shake. I started to get whole body shakes, and I was thinking, this is so weird. I can't control it. I can't stop it. My whole body was shaking. Little did I know at the time I was having Riger fits, which was like your body's reaction to serious infection. Actually, my body had started to go septic. They thought I was in for a urine infection. They were just treating my urine infection. They did not know that things were starting to get really serious. And at the time, I didn't know things were starting to get serious. I remember them saying that there was liquid in my lungs and that they were concerned, so they were going to put me on oxygen. And they decided at this point to transfer me from a maternity assessment to maternity high dependency. They were getting in all these consultants from all over the place. They'd done everything and they were at a complete loss and they didn't know what to do. So I'd been in there Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then by the Wednesday, they'd sent Paul home. And then the next thing I remember is I'd woken up and they'd said to me, we're taking you to high dependency. We phoned Paul.
You sent me a picture ahead of coming on here. You look incredibly unwell.
And then the consultant said to me, you're here because you're really not well and we need to get you better. That was when she said, we're going to have to put in a central line. And I didn't know what a central line was. I now know that was them at their absolute end of the choices and the options, because they didn't know. So they put in this central line, and then the next thing I know is I've got the urology consultant coming along saying that they're going to put in this nephrostomy, which is essentially a bypass for my kidney, which would come out of a tube whatever's in my kidney would come out from a tube and into a bag, which would be attached to my back. And he said, you'll probably have this until the end of your pregnancy.
Yep.
And I just remember thinking, what? He just dropped it in there like it was nothing. You're going to have this bag until the end of your pregnancy.
And you've been out jogging, like literally.
And I'd been out jogging.
Mm-hmm.
That was the end of any sort of running. There's me thinking I'm going to have this really fit pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep running. I'm going to stay slim. Goodness knows why I cared so much about that. Probably because of where I'd been. And then, boom, we're going to put this bag in your body and it's going to be the bane of your life for the next 6 months.
A life-changing experience in terms of like putting things into order of significance, and running quickly doesn't mean anything at that point because you're in survival mode. But I think the thing you said to me to keep us on the theme of why we're speaking in the first place was let's just take running as one of the things. You don't understand the meaning and value of some things until it's literally ripped out.
Yeah.
And then you know what it does for you and what it does to you.
I just didn't think for a moment that I wouldn't be able to run during my pregnancy. I just thought this is going to be me. I'm going to be one of these girls with a bump and I'm going to be running. I wasn't even well enough to walk. I couldn't even walk around the block, and I spent my pregnancy on the couch with my bag for company.
Something else you said was that's the kind of thing that can lead to people running marathons in your memory.
I know. My best friend said that after. They said, we thought when we heard about the central line, we thought we'd be running a marathon in your memory.
Yeah.
And that was when it really hit home that I'd really not been well.
So that's you. You've definitely dragged the tone of this down, so thanks for that. You've taken all the humour out. Jesus Christ.
Go back up again.
So just, if anybody's still listening, thank you for hanging in there. She's not normally as depressing as this. No, in all seriousness, Yvonne, this was a bit of your story that I texted Alison about immediately after I heard it and said, this is the point when I'd stopped just assuming you were always at the front of the pack and went, well, there's much more to this journey than I knew about because I had only seen the successes. How do you get back from that to a path of fitness and wellness? Like, what's that time frame like?
6 weeks after Alexander was born, I got that blooming bag taken off, and it was just the best feeling getting that tube out. It was the best thing ever. And then the very first thing I did was contact a woman called Wendy who does this course, this rehab for postnatal mums called Whole Core. And I just remember thinking, right, I want to run. I'm desperate to run, but I need to make sure that my body is ready to run. I'll never forget the first night that I went back to track and I was like, yeah, here we go. I'm going to run around this track. I'm going to have the best time ever. And I couldn't even run around the track once.
No.
And I was like, oh.
One rep it out.
I'd also had a C-section I would like to add, so that I was like,
shit, I'm back here again, and this whole, you'll get there eventually.
So I went back to track, and so Alexander was born in the August, and then I went back to track, and it must have been about October, November, and then I just started trying to go along to training as regularly as I could, really. The first thing I did was the Christmas handicap, and I remember, again, gung-ho 5 miles, thinking, woohoo, I'm going to smash this, and I was like nowhere near where I thought it was going to be. It was just these reality checks that kept coming back to me. February came, and I did the national cross country, so that was my first proper race, I'm sure. And then in the March, I did the Alloa half marathon, and I did it in 1:31. And I remember thinking, oh, here we go. I'm getting back.
What year was that?
Where it used to be. So this was 2019. So Alexander had been born in 2018. This was 26 months later. So I did my first half marathon 6 months later. And then I remember thinking, right, I want to do another one. I want to do another half marathon. But before that, I did the Troon 10K, and I got my first ever sub 40. So I got my 39.
Got one of the magic numbers.
I got it. I couldn't believe it. 39:47. So Alexander was 8 months, maybe 4 months later. So Alexander was just over 1. I did the Glasgow half again, and I got another PB. I suppose it was then. It was 1:27, and I was just thinking, whoa! I've gone not just only under 1:30. I've gone way under 1:30. Yeah. So I was absolutely delighted. So that was late 2019, and then of course March 2020 was lockdown. So I had these huge dreams. Yeah. I was about to turn 35. People had told me about the international cross country. In fact, tell a lie, rewind, because in 2019 I did go for the trial for the international cross country, but I missed it by 1 place.
Fourth again.
I was. I tell you, I was fourth. It was the curse. To be honest, lockdown was where it all began, and I used lockdown unknowingly as an escape, and I trained every single day. Right,
but let's pause for breath before we go there, because that timeline, I don't know about you, Alison, from if you've had experience of friends with anything like that timeline of the comeback feels wild to me. How
Yeah, I was going to say, I
Like,
don't know if they'd be able
yeah.
to run after 6
Yeah.
months having a baby, but
I
that's
know.
incredible.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, like, well, first of all, yeah, I mean, how do you do it with a 6-month-old? But also, do you think that maybe because most people would have to slowly build back up, but do you think that everything that happened to you maybe mentally gave you that edge that you didn't have before, like that fight, and
Yeah.
just thought, do you know what, like, let's just,
Yeah.
life's too short.
You've totally hit the nail on the head there. Like the determination that I had from being at the absolute rock bottom of health and having nothing, not even really being able to walk, I did find this whole new level of motivation and determination. But I wasn't for being patient, because I was wanting it there and then. Did give me a whole new level of determination, and also just application, I suppose, applying myself to actually get into training. Because being a mum on maternity leave is, as mums, any mum would know, it's full on, and it really is. It's hard going, and it's emotionally draining, and it's physically draining. You're sleep deprived. And I remember thinking, if I'm getting any time for myself, it's to run.
Yeah.
There's a couple of friends that we've got that all say exact same thing, and I think it sounds like such an odd thing to people that maybe haven't been through having a young baby, but I do get it just from having spoken to them. They say that if you've got any time, it's not to sleep, it's for you. You need to go and do something worthwhile. And I guess if you're in that position where you're already sleep deprived, you're probably not eating right, everything revolves around this little human, you're like, right, well, we'll make this hour, whatever you've got, count. And I guess it gives you like a new kind of focus and purpose almost.
Yeah, because my husband would come home from work and I'd be like, right, I'm away, bye.
So
and honestly, I would just hand him over and I'd be ready in my running stuff. And it sounds terrible, but I just needed out. Yeah. And a lot of people run with their buggy, and I've got massive, respect for the people that run with the buggy and the baby's sleeping, but I couldn't even push the pram while he slept, because I thought, if he's sleeping, I'm out.
You're out.
Yeah.
As long as he's looked after.
Yeah.
Don't just leave him.
It's like, just leave him at the spa.
Sleep well.
Yeah, so that was my break and my time for me.
We'll never know this for any of us, what lockdown did to our running, because everybody's story is different, and it's definitely been a net positive over 35 episodes of this. It's been a net positive in people's running, if not in their life, certainly. Like, I'm not underplaying what lockdown did in terms of like isolating people and illnesses and deaths, but it launched millions of running journeys. It reinvigorated probably even more. I wonder if for you, because it sounded you were on the upward trajectory going into that with big dreams, I wonder if it came at the right time or the wrong time, if it slowed you or if it sped you up. I suppose you'll never really know, because you only had it that one way, and I'm seeing what you're doing now and where you're at. But what do you feel? What's your gut feeling in terms of what that lockdown did to give you the chance to train?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it definitely came at the right time, because I'd found my times had already started to tumble. I'd got PBs in the 10K and in the half. And I remember thinking, when it was lockdown, I'd only just discovered at this point, which seems really weird, who Morag Miller was. So to me, she's just like the epitome of, especially now that she's a mum of two. But I just remember looking at her then. When I had Alexander, she didn't have a baby, but she was pregnant, and I was looking at her running, and I just remember thinking, oh, if she can do it, I can do it. And so she was out running, and I remember looking at her Strava thinking, and I kind of started to copy what she was doing.
Yep.
Instead of not running on a Wednesday, I started going out and doing 5 miles on a Wednesday. And then on a Friday, instead of not running on a Friday, I started going out and doing 7 miles on a Friday. And it just kind of grew from there, because the only time, because you're only allowed out once a day, let's say I went out for a walk with Alexander in the morning, it would get to the afternoon, my husband would come home from work, and I'd be like, well, I know I'm breaking the rules here, but I'm away for a run.
Yeah.
And I was going out twice a day, and I know that's probably frowned upon, or maybe other people were doing it as well. I don't know, but
I don't think it is at all. I think you do. I think people did what they needed for their life.
I mean, and I'd be out running myself. There was nobody around. I was running on the farms around here, and that really catapulted me into running 5-6 days a week, rather than running 2-3 times a week. I suppose in the early days, I've got Morag to thank for that, because I used to look at how many miles she did and how good she was, and thinking, well, maybe I do need to up my miles a wee bit. And there was the time when you weren't even allowed to drive to go to run.
That's right.
Which seems crazy now. Yeah. So what I would do is I would run to track, which is 2.5 miles away from here. I would do my big track session, and then I would run 2.5 miles back. So I was naturally building up my miles, and I didn't even realise it. So I had I started doing virtual 5Ks and virtual 10Ks. And I had a friend at that time, I think you were allowed to start training with somebody at that point, because I wouldn't put it on Strava otherwise, who started pacing me. So he used to be a runner for Gifford North, and he wasn't a runner as such anymore, but he was still fast enough that he could pace me to PBs. And we went out one random Saturday afternoon to the track at Eastwood High School for a 5K. And he said, right, I'm going to sit at this pace, just see if you can hang on to me. And he paced me around, and I did a 17:29 on the track that day. And I remember thinking, whoa.
And your PB had been what previously?
Oh god, I can't remember. So I kind of went 20, and then I went 18. I went to 18 and a half. So probably, and this was all virtual, about 18 and a half solo round.
So you knocked best part of a minute?
Aye.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wait a minute, did that just happen?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one he paced me to was a virtual 10K. I just remember that I went then down to 38, and then down to, I'm sure I went down to 37 in the virtual races as well. And just thinking, I need to do a real race here, because these times don't seem real to me.
Yeah,
I just looked at girls doing these times in the past and thought, they're nonsense numbers, I'll never run those times. And all of a sudden I was getting
that's where I am right now. Like, well, you know this, Yvonne, because actually you were quite instrumental in what I just did last weekend at the half marathon, in terms of, I had a plan on how I was going to approach that. We had a chat a couple of nights before that completely flipped what I was going to do. I was going to go out, run.
I thought you were joking as well.
No, and I really wasn't. My plan was to go out and go as hard as I could and then hang on for as long as I could. And you were saying, don't try this, and 5, then a big bit in the middle, then another 5 at the end. And it worked perfectly. But I think that was something Alison and I wanted to dig into with you, is we've covered the whole gambit, we guess, of pace ranges, and we don't get fixated in pace. But when we've got somebody on that's been on your journey, I think we both want to know sort of, how do you get there? You've said a couple of things already that are resonating with why I'm. Volume is one. I just run now in nights that I didn't. I run much more frequently than I did for longer, and that definitely does something. But Alice, is there anything you want to dig into there that you've heard about that jump in pace?
Well, I was laughing because at one point I was about to say, "Oh, that's exactly like me," and then you said your time, and I was like, but I actually have the exact same story of how I got my 5K PB, because it was in lockdown as well. Because at that point we trained for a marathon that was never going to happen about 5 times, and then my coach said to me, "Look, now's the time to try that sub 25K." And when you were allowed to run with somebody again, me and Kirsten used to go to the track, and one Saturday she was like, "Right, you just do your thing and I'll just do my thing." And I was like, right, this is the day I'm going to try. And that was my first 5K. But a bit like you, I was like, oh my God. But then I was like, well, it is on Strava, but it's not a race.
No, it's not real.
And then you're like, right, we need lockdown over to. But no, I just think it's amazing. But it's interesting because we've spoken about this so much. This training block, volume is definitely one. But I think, like you say, it's maybe doing that speed session, but what goes either side, just to kind of build that endurance a bit more. And then, I don't know what you think about this, but do you find that, are you better to focus on one kind of distance, so like a half marathon, or do you find that if you maybe are marathon training, they all start to kind of fall because you're just benefiting from that throughout the training?
Well, it's funny because this marathon that I'm training for just now, I've not trained for a marathon for 7 years, so pre-baby, pre the magic number times, I hadn't done a marathon since then, so I haven't got any experience apart from this experience about marathon training. But the interesting thing for me was when I got my current half marathon PB, I was certainly not half marathon training. I was still very much middle of the road training. I was still going to track on a Tuesday. I was going to club on a Thursday. So track's always around about a 5K volume. Club Thursday can be anything between 6 and 10 miles, depending on the warm up, the cool down, and the session. You might do mile reps, you might do K reps, you might do hills, standard kind of sessions that you would get at club or from an app or whatever. And then I would do my long run at the weekend with easy runs in between. So that was the difference. I was doing those easy runs in between as well. The week before I got my PB at the half marathon, I was out with my friend running, and we thought, right, we'll just do this kind of easy. So I think we sat at like just under 8-minute miles, and we were like, oh man, this feels quite hard. How are we going to run at half marathon pace next weekend? And to me, the half marathon was going to be about 1:25, because my previous half had been 1:27 at the Glasgow half, and I was doing the Glasgow half again. And I don't think I'd done a half since 2019. I think that's a good 3-year gap.
Mhm.
I'm sure of it. I just remember turning up at the start of the Glasgow half thinking, right, I've got no clue what kind of time I'm going to go here. I really want to do about 1:25, but maybe I could go a little bit quicker. And this kind of also shows, even though it was only 2 years ago, how naive I was about pacing, because I thought, I'm just going to go off at 6-minute miles and I'm going to see what happens. And I thought, I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, because I never ran at that pace in my life before. But I got up that hill at St Vincent Street and I'm looking at my watch being like, yeah, I'm running at 6-minute miles. Amazing.
Up that hill.
Up that hill. And I'm looking around at the girls near me and I'm like, whoa, I know these girls.
Yeah, I for the
know
telly.
these girls from the running team.
Ailish McCulk.
I know. And I'm like, why are you here? Why are you here? Right, I'm totally out of my depth here. And then I just remember, like, 1 mile went by, 2 miles went by, 3 miles went by, and I'm like, I'm still hitting 6-minute miles here. This is good. I mean, I say 6, it wasn't exactly 6, it was maybe like 6:03, 6:04, something like that. And then I remember getting to 10 miles and I was like, I'm still hitting 6-minute miles here. What is going on here? And there was people shouting on me, and loads of people seemed to know who I was on the course, just, you know, people, club runners who knew who I was. And I remember thinking, I've only got 3 miles to go here. And we'd come out of Belhouston Park and it was along that flat along Paisley Road West into Glasgow Green. And I remember thinking, I think I've still got enough in the tank here to absolutely tank it. I'm just going to put my foot down. And again, it was my first half in fast shoes. Never done that before. Vaporflies, I think they were. Absolutely hammered it. And Ryan, I've sent you my splits from this race because I was like, this is the best race that I ever did.
The dream splits.
3 miles. Yeah, my last 3 miles were sub 6. Yeah. And I just thought, and the crowd just drove me. I had no clue what even time I was on for, because it was way out the realms of what I'd even believed that I could
Can't even do the maths.
No, I was just like, hammer time.
Yeah.
Just go as fast as you absolutely can until the very end. And I remember crossing the line, and again, the naivety of what I had no clue about. Somebody said to me, come over here because you've got a championship medal. And I'm saying, what?
What?
A what? And someone's putting this Scottish Athletics silver medal around my neck, and I'm going, still, yeah. Can someone explain what?
What are you giving me here?
No, I had no clue that was a Scottish Champs half marathon.
Yeah.
I had no clue that I was second. I had no clue at all. All I knew was I just crossed the line in 1:19.
Oh my God.
And I'd never, ever dreamed of that. And that was a complete, for me, turning point, because I thought I wasn't even training for a half marathon. Yeah.
You were just somebody's more out for a really fast run.
I ran just under 8 minutes, and I don't know. I want to call it a fluke, or I don't know what happened that day. It was just the best run of my life.
You didn't limit yourself by what you think you can do, and you just actually ran to... You can't run these mega times unless your head gets out the way of letting you try. And I suppose that's the risk reward, because you could have ended up back with a central line again with that pace.
Well, I know. I still look back and think, how did I have the balls to actually just go for that? And I still don't know. That will be the ultimate standout memory race in my head for forever.
That girl that burst out her leggings must have been awfully proud.
I know, she was standing on the finish line cheering me on with her leggings.
Well, it's completely inspiring to now know the backstory of where you came from to there is just unbelievable.
It's a long story. I'm very sorry. It took a
it's a long story worth hearing, and I'm going to fast forward us a bit to bring us to the here and now. Yep. So I'm going to rhyme off a couple of things that have happened since just before the turn of the year or the turn of the year. You represented Scotland 2023.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Alloa half marathon very recently, second place, 1:21. Yep. You're moving back towards those times that would have seemed like nonsensical. You're not a million miles away from there again.
Yeah. Yep.
Alan Scally mixed relay, first team, sub 18 again. Mm-hmm. But the one actually I thought epitomised why you are where you are is you're awarded the Shield for Consistent Performance at the Gift North Awards. And
Yeah.
that probably speaks more volumes as to why you are where you are than anything else, because none of it, you just said the word fluke. You might have the magic race when everything falls into place. But you can't do it without the base and the training there. Even your best day can only fall to the level that you train at. Bob Burrows, he says it regularly, fall to the level of your training, not like sort of expecting that you have that miracle day.
Mm-hmm.
Scottish Veteran Road Relay Championships 3 years in a row. The accolades are coming thick and fast. You're in a great spell of form.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the marathon. Tell the listeners what the plan is for that. Where are you going? What's the marathon?
Yeah, so I'm doing the London Marathon, and woohoo! And I think I feel like I was scared from the beginning with this, because not only did I not really plan to do London, I applied late. Everybody on Strava was on week 4 of training, and a friend of mine had said to me, London take on championship places based on your half time. And I said, no, I did not know this.
Yeah.
So I looked up the qualifying time for the championship place for London, and I was within it. Not by much, but by enough. And so I thought I'll just enter it and see what happens. And so I'm sitting for a couple of weeks, because I think I applied in December. I can't remember, but it took till the middle of January for me to get.
Yeah, because they delayed it. They actually delayed it because Alison was waiting to find out.
Yeah. So I probably should have, in hindsight, started training just in case, but I didn't. So that was it. I'd got the place, and then I thought, right, I'm going to have to start really training here.
Shit, I better run.
I know.
You might be the most naive fast guy I've ever met. No clue.
Honestly,
no clue about winning medals.
I was queen of the Sunday 10 miler. Queen of it. That's all I ever did. No longer, no shorter, 10 miles. And I remember thinking, how am I going to get up to 26? So I did what every normal person does and got myself a coach. And I just contacted my friend who I knew from another running club, who just started a kind of side gig coaching business, a coach at PH, Dan. I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning him. Dan Monaghan. And he just started setting me out my running plans, and he said, right, we'll start off at 12 miles. And I think his plan from the beginning, which I didn't know this was going to be his plan, was just to up my miles every fortnight by 2 miles, but to maintain the same pace. Mm-hmm. So I started at 10, then 12, then 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. And so I upped my pace every fortnight by 2 miles, but tried to keep that pace that I'd been doing the 10 miles at. And to me, that seems, again, unachievable. But actually, when you only add on 2 miles each week, it's not a huge margin. I'm thinking it's only a mile out and back. Increasing the volume of my sessions during the week, so he was increasing how much tempo I was doing during the week, and he always he always encouraged me to go to track on a Tuesday with the club. Again, I feel like a bit of a novice saying this, because I still don't really 100% know what time I'm going for.
No, I wouldn't ask you to put one on it anyway.
So I'm just hoping that my PB right now is 3:13, which was at Stirling in 2017.
I think it's fair to say that time's in danger.
Yeah. So I'm thinking sub 3 is first, and then anything below that, depending on the day, depending on the weather, depending on how it all goes. I'm really just hoping that I can get somewhere down in the 250s.
Alison, this sounds like our conversation today. Yeah. Not about the 250 bit, by the way, in case anybody's listening. We were not discussing 250s, but about that, the weather, all the uncontrollables are the things in my head at the moment. Like I feel like I've controlled every controllable up to now. Yeah. And now the uncontrollables are like a monster in your head saying, if
we get a hot day,
that's a game changer.
I'm going to just throw sub 3 out the window, because we've been training in sub-zero temperatures.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm nervous and worried about.
Well, Alison, I know that if you or I see Yvonne anywhere near 26 miles, we've had a bloody good day.
I was going to say, if we see you, do not try and keep up.
No, I'm buzzing for it though. Are you excited? Do you have that excitement of the whole London Marathon thing, or are you locked in on time?
Yeah, I have done London before, exactly 10 years ago this year.
Right, okay.
And it was the worst race of my life. Complete novice, no clue. I ran off like an absolute hero, fell apart at 10 miles, jogged for 16 miles, cried, had to stop, try and stretch out my calves. I hadn't taken on a single gel. I'd maybe taken on a few sips of water. I didn't even know gels were a thing back then. No clue. I was completely clueless. So the fact that now I know what kind of pace I want to do, I know what kind of pace I need to run at, and I'm going to be taking on gels. These are all things.
This is your inspiration, folks. This is your inspiration. 10 years ago, she was an idiot. Now she's a really fast idiot. And she knows what a gel is.
Oh, honestly, it's actually, when I think about it, I think, how did I know so little?
Yeah.
And that was my that was my second marathon. Anyway, I've done 4 now, and I've never taken on a gel once. So
you did tell me that on a training run when you were taking on gels. Like, it was honestly watching somebody trying to open it for the first time, going, "What's?" And I was like, "It's all right, you'll be okay. Just stop."
And then I'm giving you my rubbish, like, "Can you carry?"
I know. I was putting the empties in my flip belt. See that? Not littering, folks. That's Press Play and Run Club all over it. So what's very, very briefly, because we're going to take you into our quickfire round in a minute. Alison's going to do that, but beyond London, hopes, dreams, fears, aspirations.
Yeah, I definitely want to get back to 10Ks and halves. I want to try and get my legs back to being able to do those kind of times again. I would love to get back to my PBs, which now are 36, 18 and 119.
You're not
a
million miles away in some of them.
What's that?
You're not a million miles away in some of them.
No, it's just getting these.
But that time at that level is a lot.
Yeah. So I would love to get back down to there. So the Glasgow half is a target, as is I'm trying to think what 10K would be a target. I've not even thought about it, but Glasgow half definitely.
Yeah. Okay,
it's got my heart now.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in London, and I was delighted you came along to our club. It's amazing to see people like you rocking up, and to hear also that you feel those nerves. That I feel those nerves every time I walk around the corner and see the big group of people, and you're like, right here, how the hell did we get here again?
Yeah.
But it's an amazing thing, so I'm grateful that you came along.
No, and thank you, because I loved it, and I definitely want to get back to it when I'm not doing these silly miles and you're actually there to run with.
Aye, no, we can actually just chill and run, and you can hold your own rubbish. But we're looking forward to seeing what you do. Hopefully we'll see you in London as well and get to share a moment down there too. But Alison, can you do the honours for us? Because no guest gets out of here, Yvonne, without going through the quickfire round and picking their song for the Press Play and Run playlist. So I'm going to hand over to Alison.
Right, are we ready to go?
Oh, I don't know.
Favourite running shoe of all time?
Brooks Hyperion Temple.
Favourite training route?
The farms around Eaglesham.
Proudest running moment?
Glasgow half.
Worst running or race experience? I think you've answered that one.
Easy. London Marathon 2014. Horrendous. And it was hot. I took my vest off and had a vest burn line.
Was that worse than the leggings bursting open?
Well, it's a close one. I think the leggings do edge it though.
Go-to race nutrition?
Bagel and peanut butter.
That one gel that she tried.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good one because we've kind of covered it. But if you could run alongside yourself as a beginner runner now, what advice would you give yourself?
It doesn't get easier, never gets easier, but you will get better.
One inspirational Insta profile that you never skip by.
I think for me, I've kind of hinted to this. It would need to be Morag Miller for the
Amazing
baby,
runner.
the working mum, and the achievements that she's had post-baby is just phenomenal.
I love that, actually. I love when you've got somebody who you can aspire to be, no matter what level you're at. There's somebody, it's like that person that you're racing and they never know you're racing them.
Yeah. I don't think she knows. I kind of hint to her, but I try not to be a total fangirl because I also go to her for skincare treatments.
You're too late now. You're too late now. We'll be tagging her in this.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing.
Run with or without music?
Without.
Favourite park run?
I want to say I think I've got 2. Pollock just for the crowds and knowing so many people, and Elder Park for the speeds and the coffee.
Best trip to get out of the door to train or run when motivation is low?
Yeah, just that feeling when you come back and you get your shower after your run is worth it every single time. You know you're done and your wet stuff's on the floor and you're in the hot shower.
It's never not worth it.
That feeling will just be the best one.
And finally, finish the sentence. I press play and run because. Finish the sentence. I press play and run because.
I want to inspire my little boy.
Like that.
That's better.
Mum run.
Right, last order of business, Yvonne. Now, this is interesting because you said you don't listen to music ever when you're running.
Oh.
But we have a playlist that's associated with the podcast. Every guest picks a track that motivates them. So it could be from like the gym or just something that gets you fired up pre-run, whatever it might be. So can you give us a track for our playlist, please?
Yeah, this is a bit sad, but this is the track that I always ask for when I go to the QA 5K, which is the 5K that my coach Dan organises, and it's always Beyonce's "Who Runs the World, Girls."
Don't think we've had that actually, surprisingly.
No, I like it.
Yeah.
Wow, come on the girls, let's burn our bras.
On her rib leg.
Exactly. Yeah, no, but actually we'll leave the bras since we've no leggings on. That could be, we're getting to that indecent
point. I kept those leggings, by the way, I can frame them.
Exactly. The moment you knew you had to get your act together. Yvonne, last thing is to say just a massive thank you. Getting to know you in the last few while has been great. I love your sense of humour. I love the fact that you are so far at the front of the pack. You don't have any sense of, it doesn't seem like the most serious thing in the world of being at the front of the pack, yet you are. Like,
yeah,
you still, I can relate to the fact that you can relate to somebody like me where, like, that's not where I live, up there, up at that side of the pack. So
yeah, no. It's so inclusive, that's why I love it.
And then when we found out about what you'd overcome to get there, it's just a whole nother layer of wow as to what you've done. And I think we were both excited, weren't we, Alison, about just getting the chance to pick your brains about how you got to there. And there's a lot of natural ability in there, you can sense it, but there's also tons of blood, sweat and tears.
Oh, a lot. I have had this chat a lot recently about natural talent versus blood, sweat and tears, and it's funny that you say that because that's one thing that I don't think I have is natural talent. So for you to say that, I feel like that's a compliment because I feel like there isn't any.
No, I don't know. I think you get to a level, and I think there's some people that could work their tail off for their whole life and they could do everything you've done.
Yeah,
and they don't have the genetics or they just don't have that bit that would ever get them there. They can make massive progress in their own, but there takes something to differentiate. I go back to, I've mentioned him 3 times this, I go back to somebody like Jack who turned up at the club, didn't know him from Adam. He doesn't run with a club. He's only just really getting into his running. He's not been a runner for long. He was a dirt bike rider.
Yeah.
He's running like 240 marathons without a clue as to what he's capable of. I look at him and I think if somebody put you into a club structure, Christ knows where he would end up in 2 years' time. There's something very natural about that. That's not just hard work. And I think you've got enough of that, but then we hear the work. It never comes without the hard work. So kudos to you. Can't wait to see what you do in London and looking forward to getting more runs with you in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks. And nice to meet you officially, Alison.
I know you too. And we'll see you in London.
Yeah, see you there.
Thank you to you, the listeners, for joining us for another episode of the Press Play and Run podcast. You can really help to support the podcast by subscribing or following on your podcast platform of choice and by leaving a review. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Press Play and Run Podcast and to add the Press Play and Run playlist on Spotify. We'll be back every 2 weeks with new episodes, and please be sure to keep an eye on our Instagram page to find out which guests will be joining us. Until then, keep getting the trainers on, press play and run.